Big round of applause.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. No, we're not having applause tonight, so we'll just go with the flow. Who here in Illinois thinks our current governor, Bruce Rauner, is doing a good job? Mike?
Okay.
Okay?
I'll give it okay.
Okay?
Yeah, this chance.
Those of you that are quiet,
He's got a
I know
hard
what you
job.
think.
I
Well,
couldn't defeat the Maddie machine.
Thank you.
as you can tell from my title, Tim, 2018 will be 4 years since Governor Rauner was elected, and we're going to have a new election. Some of the key points, I'm doing this because most of you are such busy business people, you don't have time. So I'm kind of going over the whole election with you quickly. So a few things to know. Rauner's a Republican. The general election's in November 2018, but first we have a primary. Now, primary is important because there's a lot of Democrats in the state and have a pretty good chance. So the Democratic primary, I think Republican too, is somewhere in the middle of March. And basically there's 3 top Democratic candidates. Does anyone know who they are? Can you guess one of them?
I know one.
Pritzker. Anyone else? Christopher Kennedy
Anybody else?
and State Senator Dan Biss. Now, there were a few other candidates, lesser candidates. Some have dropped out. 1 or 2 are still in the race. I think there's a guy downstate. I was trying to Google his name, Bob Daybar or something, but he doesn't have a chance. These are the 3 main candidates. Now, most of these candidates, they jumped into the race at the beginning of the summer or end of the spring. And at the time for the Democratic candidates, actually because of name recognition, in polls, Christopher Kennedy was kind of ahead. He was polling at 30 or 40%, and Pritzker, who actually ran for a lesser office years ago and came in last place, he was in second place, and I think Dan Biss was farther down the line. But since then, Pritzker, who's the only billionaire, Chris Kennedy is wealthy, but maybe he's worth 100 or so million, not like Pritzker's worth billions. So since the summer started, Pritzker spent about $20 million on commercial advertising for TV, which is the most important thing to do in elections, because let's face it, Americans don't read anymore, they watch TV mostly. So now in a recent poll in the past, a month ago, so Pritzker has jumped out to say 35% lead. Chris Kennedy is 20 or 15%, and State Senator Dan is 10%. So Pritzker has jumped way out in front. Now, another thing to know about the election, Pritzker is also Mayor Rahm. That's his candidate. He's the insider choice. So whether the mayor engineered this or not, the Democratic Party has gotten behind Pritzker, and most of the major unions have already endorsed Pritzker. This is months ago, once when he had first gotten in the race, before they even looked at the other candidates or really thought much about it. The unions endorsed Pritzker too, and one of the reasons is they don't want to spend their money. Generally, any Democratic candidate that wins the primary, the unions are going to give tens of millions of dollars, and all the unions thought, well, if we pick this guy Pritzker, we don't have to give him any money because he's rich. So because of all these things I've just mentioned, Pritzker has jumped way out in the lead. And as some of you raised your hands, maybe you raised your hand because of the commercials. Now recently, Chris Kennedy, he just started showing some commercials, trying to get back into the race. And I think there's already been some debates, but to me I think, like I said, the election is already in March. So in my opinion, Pritzker kind of has it wrapped up, because how are these other guys ever going to catch up to Pritzker? Maybe Kennedy's going to have a little more commercial advertising, there's going to be a few more debates, but the fact is, in some ways, Pritzker has already fought the election for the primary, to go against Rauner. So assuming Pritzker wins, it will be Rauner and Pritzker. But the problem with this is, if you're a Democrat, one of the main reasons people don't like Rauner is because he's a rich guy, right? But he's also a self-made man, and how well is Pritzker going to fare against Rauner when Pritzker is a multi-billionaire? So the unions and some of the other insiders could actually be making a mistake by picking this guy Pritzker just because he has money. But as I said, this is a town hall meeting. Tim, you've been quiet there. What are some of your feelings? I take you as kind of an independent, somewhere in the middle. What do you think about the state 2018 governor's election?
Well, it's interesting to me you mentioned those other two people running, and I didn't know because Pritzker's ads have so much saturated the airwaves that I had no idea there's anybody else running.
Would you tend to favor one candidate over another right now?
Well, I think you're probably right. Pritzker is definitely the richest out there, and he's definitely the most influential. He's the one people are going to be talking about. He's got his own, they've got all the Pritzker pavilions and all this other Pritzker money around, so he's very, very well known. These other people have to do something to get their name recognition up fast, or
Right.
they're out.
Some kind of stunt. What about you, Kat?
I don't like to vote for a candidate that has no first name.
JB? Is that what you mean?
Is that his first name, JB? JB Pritzker?
Jay, that's his first
Jay
name.
Pritzker. Isn't he the big fat guy?
Right.
That guy, yeah.
Yes.
No, I'm not
He's like
gonna
Chris
vote.
Christie, but
I'm
Yeah.
not voting.
Yeah.
No
You're not voting
fat,
for
no
him?
fat guys.
A few other things I skimmed over in the race. Now, many people would think, Kennedy, he's got the name, his Kennedy charisma, he's wealthy. I personally thought when he jumped in the race, he's going to win. But it turns out this Kennedy guy, he's not that typical Kennedy, and he's kind of a prickly sort of a fellow. So actually, he's kind of underperformed just because people really didn't. A lot depends on a personality of the candidate when you're speaking or talking to people. And it turns out this fellow Kennedy, aside from not having spent much money up till now, he's underperformed. But Joni, what about you? We know you're from another country, different political atmosphere there, different way of picking candidates or having candidates picked for you. What do you think about governors or just elections in general in this great country of ours?
I think this election is kind of like a play.
Play?
Yeah.
How so?
It's funny and yeah. I'm not into politics, so my opinion might be biased. I mean,
Tell us what you really feel.
I'm not familiar to either one. I mean, either party, but from the presidential election, and I see that every time I like someone, but they always always fall down. So,
Oh.
so yeah. So I mean, my overall impression is the American election is always surprise me. I mean,
Okay.
in
That's a good
my
point.
personal experience. Yeah.
Some of us think we know what's going on, but the average American may have different thoughts, especially if we live in a big city in Chicago. The fact is, most of the state, most of the country is a sea of red. Any other thoughts on the 2018, Mike?
One thing that's interesting, I had a phone call, JB Pritzker.
Personally?
Well, I did.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's billionaire versus billionaire, you know, Browner versus JB Pritzker. He opened a Lakeview office, apparently, and at Belmont and Sheffield, and they're looking to get people to work with them, so.
Well, that's
I
great.
got a
The
call from-
candidate actually called.
Well, it was like someone who worked for JB.
Oh, someone who worked.
Yeah, he didn't call me personally.
Well,
so,
so.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for participating in our forum. And my closing advice to you, whoever candidate you are for, just go out and